Racine is a place where people have always made things with their hands, whether they've grown it on the farm or created it on the factory floor, and crafts of the blue-collar portion of the visual art world. And there was, I think, a very good connection there for the local population, that people really would respect the work we were showing here and could identify with it.
Racine has many different dimensions to the community. It's a working class community. It's one of the most diverse communities in Wisconsin. And the arts have a very special place in the community. And Bruce was able to recognize that from the beginning.
My long relationship with the Racine Art Museum started in 1974 when I was fresh out of college and hired by the Charles A. Worcester Museum of Fine Arts in Racine. The Charles A. Worcester Museum of Fine Arts is what was once the home of Charles and Jenny Worcester. They were dairy farmers. That property of 13 acres and their home was donated by Mrs. Worcester through her estate to the city of Racine to be turned into an art museum in memory of her husband. Under my directorship, we created a second focus in contemporary crafts, meaning functional and sculptural works created out of clay, fiber, glass, metal, and wood media.
The collection is more broadly based than just nationally. It's now internationally. But his rapport with artists and collector is unparalleled.
We've really worked on creating those relationships. We have something like donors to the collection living in 30 different states across the country now. And this is why we were able to create a collection that is second only to a collection in New York City and a collection in Washington, D.C. in size, scope, and significance here in a community of 80,000 people.
He was able to build from that base to a museum with national stature, a national stature that needed a building. It had a wonderful collection, but no place to show it.
We were only able to show about 5% of the collection items in any one year. So we created RAM as a home for that collection 2 miles away in the heart of Racine's downtown.
Visitors come to Racine because of the lake. They come to Racine because they know people in the community, and now they come to Racine because of the Racine Art Museum.
The greatest thing about this project was that not only was this building a dream of mine, but it was a dream of so many people in the community. When I went to people in their living rooms and spoke to them early on in the campaign to build the building, that I would say to them, we're taking this building that many of you think is not terribly attractive in the downtown area, and we're going to wrap it in plastic, and I'm going to light it at night so it will be a beacon into downtown. And people would look at me and they would stop for a minute and they'd say, Bruce, if this is something you think you can do, we'll get on board and we will be behind you on this.
In the year 2000, Bruce Pepich started the largest fundraising campaign in the city of Racine, in a city that had the highest rate of unemployment in the state.
The total cost for this building was $6.5 million. It works out to about $125 a square foot, which is probably somewhere around the price for a small home in a subdivision. We had to become a model that a medium-sized community could achieve architectural excellence on a limited budget.
It's not the big, dramatic, fancy architectural new museum that we find lots of places around the country now, but it still has very important architectural interest.
The building's kind of interesting. It's a rehab. It's actually 2 mercantile structures that date back to the 1870s, a department store, and slammed right up next to it, a bank that was robbed by John Dillinger in a daylight holdup in the 1930s.
It's got wonderful storefront windows that make the collections accessible, that draw you into the museum because you're so intrigued with what you're seeing from the outside.
We took a 90-foot-long swath of windows on the first floor, and artists from around the country who work in clay, glass, or metal are invited to create new sculptures or reconfigure existing sculptures and create a whole environment in the windows. It's taken the museum to the street corner, and I think that's a very kind of aggressive but still at the same time incredibly welcoming stance that the museum takes.
He has a unique ability to connect with people about art and make it both challenging to the mind and touching to the heart.
I want this to be part of people's everyday lives. I want a plumber to think that he or she can come here and find this a meaningful experience.
Attendance at the Racine Art Museum and Worcester Museum is up 56% over last year. In an economic climate such as this is a wonderful thing.
People come into town to see what they've heard him talk about. People hear him speak, and then they come here to see what he's been doing.
Our percentages of visitors, something like 75% of the people coming to RAM to see its exhibitions come from outside Racine County. 44.5% of the guests in the past year who have come to view exhibitions here have come from outside the state of Wisconsin.
He's wonderful with these groups that come from Milwaukee, Chicago, Madison, all over the place.
It's put Racine on the map as a place where art matters. And you read about it in the New York Times, you read about it in contemporary craft magazines around the country. It's just brought a whole new view of Racine, I think, to the people of the United States. And Bruce has been instrumental in making that happen.
I took this job thinking I was going to be in Racine for a couple of months and move on to something else, and that was over 35 years ago.
He's gone far above the job that he has as the executive director of the Racine Art Museum.
So many people were attracted to him because of his friendly, open approach.
RAM and Worcester have an international reputation. Artists all over the world know who we are. That would never have happened without Bruce Pepich.
Bruce has brought that museum to the level of a museum the likes of which you find in New York, in Charlotte, in Chicago, and that's all happened because of Bruce Pepich. It wouldn't have happened without him, and we owe him a great debt of gratitude, both in Racine and in the state of Wisconsin.